Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Marla. I am in the New Orleans area, Metairie specifically, and I'm facilitating the Erace meeting today. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating fellow human beings of all colors with love and respect. Join us. And the land acknowledgement, which I'll read. We acknowledge that what we know as the United States is the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples. Members of our group today are on the lands of the Tonkawan, Lapon, Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Chitimacha in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Lenape and Piscataway in Maryland, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples in Boston, and the Cahuilla and Mojave in Riverside County, California. I think also the Waccamaw of North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through generations, and we state our intention to continue that stewardship now and into the future. Okay, I will go ahead now and let's see if people, well, I can explain the format of the meeting first, which I think everybody is aware of. If you're not talking, keep yourself on mute. And I will be keeping a list of people and calling in the order that I see you raise your one finger up on the screen to let me know that you would like to be on the list. You will have 2 minutes with each turn. Please respect and don't interrupt each other. No side comments to others, no personal attacks or name calling. If you have a question to ask the person who spoke for 2 minutes, please raise 2 fingers so I can call on you to ask your clarifying question. It is a clarifying question, not an opinion. An example would be, I didn't understand what you meant by, or could you please explain what you meant by? The questions are not to further the opinion of the asker. Clarifying questions also don't require a long monologue, and questions that do not qualify as clarifying will not be allowed, and that person could just get on the list. So only 2 people can ask a clarifying question per speaker. All right, if everybody wants to start with introductions, I'll go around and call on you in the order that I see you on the screen. So Nancy.
Good morning. I'm normally not first. I'm Nancy Moore, and I'm here in the New Orleans area. I have been coming to Erace since June of 2007. Good to see you.
Welcome. Stanton.
Good morning, Stanton in Austin, and I've been coming to Erace now for well over a year.
Thank you. Cindy. I think you're on mute.
When it says it's confusing, my brain goes backwards. I'm glad to see you all. Hope you're well. It's we have a house guest in town, which has been great fun to see an old friend. Looking forward to this discussion. Take care.
Thank you. Bill.
I'm Bill Ives. I've been coming to Erace for 5-6 years. Sorry about my speech, but I'm working on it. And I learn something every time I come. Look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you. Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been coming since last August and happy to be here.
Thank you. Marva.
My name's Miss Marva. Been coming to Erace for Katrina. I look forward to this lively discussion every Saturday. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Good morning. Marion?
Good morning again, everyone. I'm Marion Lagarde. I'm here in New Orleans. I've been attending the race discussions since June of 1993. Looking forward to this discussion this morning. It's good to see everyone.
Thank you. Larry?
Good morning, I'm Larry, and I'm in New Orleans and glad to be here this morning.
Thank you. Phyllis?
Good morning, I'm Phyllis. I'm in New Orleans and I've been coming to Erace since summer of 2008.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so I think I'm supposed to introduce why I brought the topic. It was actually just by happenstance. I was looking at articles about mutual aid because that's an area of interest for me that I thought would be interesting for the rest of the group. And there was a link within one of those articles about chiriarchy, I think is how you say it, but if somebody else can correct me, that's quite fine. And anyway, that's essentially how I chose the article. It was interesting. I thought it was useful and I thought it would, we would have a great discussion about it. And Bill, did you have a clarifying?
I missed, you were exploring a topic. And you said, I missed the topic you were exploring.
Yeah, it was, I was looking at articles about mutual aid because
Mutual aid.
yeah, I think that's an area that is kind of, a lot of folks don't know about it. I'm learning more about it and it's often misunderstood. So I'll probably save that for another time, but this link appeared, the link to the term chiriarchy appeared within one of the articles I was looking at. And I was not familiar with the term. Honestly, I truly never heard of it, but it's actually quite an old word. So with that, I will open the list up and take names down, and I will try to work the timer. Let me see, can you all hear this? One moment. Can you hear that? So I run into this problem a lot. I don't know. Stanton, you can hear it?
Just a slight chirp, but it's like a one-time chirp only.
Is that better? I don't know.
I don't hear any chirping, so it doesn't reach North Carolina.
Is that better?
It's making its way to Austin, but it's not going, it's going west. It's going west.
I mean, I'm trying different tones. I don't know. I can interrupt with my voice. I really am not quite sure the best way to handle all of that. But anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, Phyllis wants to be on the list. Anybody else at this time? Okay, Phyllis, go ahead.
Yeah, first I would like to say I think it would be chiriarchy, based on Kyrios, meaning Lord. There's a Greek term that's used liturgically, Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. So that's how I've been pronouncing it based on that knowledge that I have. Could be wrong. I thought this was a really great term and word to explore, because I think the situation in the world is bigger than just any one type of oppression or subordination of peoples based on whatever, and that this really brings to the forefront the need for people to all band together to fight oppression of anyone and everyone. And so I'm happy to now have this in my vocabulary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else care to get on the list? Nancy.
Yeah, I found this article to be interesting. well, that a word was created to describe this situation. You know, hadn't really thought of oppression in that way, but it did you know, enlighten me to the fact that there can be multiple layers in that regard of oppression and interconnecting ways of oppression. I guess all of my knowledge of oppression, the types of oppression that they are, was kind of segmented, never really thinking that it could be layers. And in one part of the article, it mentioned how someone who is oppressed in one situation could be an oppressor in another situation, the same person. And that's part of hierarchy. It's interesting.
Thank you. Anybody else? Bill? Bill?
Wait a minute.
How is the difference? I like the concept, but how is the difference in karaoke? Is this in Phyllis attributed to Carrie Lazon, which I don't disagree with. But how is it different from intersectionality, which we had discussed in the past? Is there a difference? I'm not challenging it. I just wanted to understand. I'll let people in the audience answer that.
Okay. Anybody else? Phyllis?
I would say it's even bigger than intersectionality because it uses that term and interlocking, and it isn't just about, you know, a individual person having different identities, and those different identities could be oppressed differently. It's about every single one of us is both oppressed and oppressor. With the exception of maybe people at the very, very top of the pyramid might be more oppressor. And so I think it's actually a bigger and better word to use. And I wasn't also using the liaison part of Kyrie liaison doesn't play into this. I want to be clear about that. The mercy part. So just the pronunciation is what I was referring to. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to get on the list? It's open.
Thanks, Phyllis.
Marion?
When I first got to the site and I looked at the first couple of sentences, the term seemed to be derived from a feminine name, and my hackles went up a little bit until I started reading. I said, now why does the root of this word seem to be feminine? So I attempted to do a little research into the root, but I didn't get anywhere. But I was a little bit miffed at first because I thought it was derived from a woman's name, a feminine name. I actually thought that.
And Phyllis has a clarifying question.
Can you explain what it was that you read in the article that made you think it came from a feminine name? You're muted.
The root, it seemed as if it came from the word Kara. I thought of Myra, and I've heard people pronounce Myra as Mira. So I thought the KY, that's just my rationale. I thought it was a feminine root.
And the list is open, Phyllis?
Yeah, let's see. The first paragraph under the etymology of kyriarchy, which means the origins of the word, says it comes from kyrios, meaning lord or master.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with the name of a person.
as I got into the article,
You muted yourself, but I think we're having a point of order. Anyway,
Yeah, I guess so. Would you like to get back on the list, Marion?
later on, oh shucks.
You're back on. I can hear you. Oh, now I can't hear you. You were,
Oh,
yes, we can hear you now.
all right, I'll wait. As I said, head on. No more cross conversation.
Okay. Anybody else for the list? It is open, wide open. Okay, Phyllis?
okay, y'all got to get on the list. Well, I want to say I think there's times where we have conversations where it seems like only one group is an oppressor and one group is being oppressed. And there's sometimes been the accusation that we victimize or keep people in a victim role who, you know, and that's been called out, I guess, or criticized. And I think that this article, this term, and the explanation of it shows that it's not necessarily about being victims, but there are people who are oppressed by systems, and there are people who uphold those systems. And a person upholding a system, like a white woman upholding patriarchy, white male heteronormative patriarchy, is very likely to be very oppressed in that system, and supports it because of the power derived from the proximity to that power. Somebody else get on the list.
No. Thank
It
you.
reminds me of an article we had a while back. I forgot who was the moderator about, I think I was a moderator, about how poor whites vote against their self-interest. And that happened in the Civil War. Slaves were owned by the top 1% in the country, in the South, but the top 1% convinced the bottom 99% to fight and die to save their property. That's crazy. But they convinced them. So I think this analysis, this term would come in and play in that. And today, a lot of poor whites, rural whites, vote against their economic self-interest because of racism. They want to hold on to their place in the pyramid, in the hierarchy pyramid. So it's a useful term, but I'm always amazed that people vote against their self-interest, support the rich people. But it's because they get swept up in the cult. He said, the former president says things that they think, and he says them out loud, legitimize their racist views. So they like that better than the economic self-interest. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Larry? Thank you.
Not really sure what I'm going to say, but I was just filling a void. And I think the hands are probably few this morning because I don't know about you all, but this was my first time hearing of the word. And so maybe we all have a tendency to wait till somebody else says something about something unfamiliar before we jump in. But this much, I try to do a little bit of searching on the word and on the author of this term, Elizabeth Fiorenza, and she's speaking from a feminist point of view because she was a feminist theologian. And So I couldn't find the word in the dictionary. You know, I was able to Google it and found it. But I'm sort of like Bill. I don't see much difference in the creation of this word than the subject of intersectionality. And, you know, I see this just as an extension of basically feminism in America, you know, which was a creation of white women who were basically seeking to come out from under the suppression and domination and control of white men. But feminism had no concern about how white men were able to rape black women at will, and where black women had no recourse of law because they were considered to be the property of white men, the same as oxen or mules or cattle. And so since feminism was almost directly opposed to white male masculine domination, you know, I always found it amazing and difficult to see how even black women could have bought into this term of feminism and this philosophy of feminism, which only led to further deterioration of the black family. And so it seems sometimes whatever the dominant society buy into, sometimes the suppressed society kind of buy into it too.
I'm sorry, you just hit 2 minutes, and I apologize that my timer is not loud enough. Would you like to get back on the list?
No, I'll wait.
Okay. Anybody else at this time? Nancy.
Responding to Larry and about feminism and Black women and feminism. Black women, I don't see your argument in saying why Black women should not join the feminist movement. I don't, and I don't see how it erodes or destroys the Black family. And women, Black women, have always been. We've never. Who has taken care of us? Have not we always had to work? Didn't we always have to work even when Black men couldn't get a job? We could always be a domestic. And I mean, I look at my family, and most of the women in my grandmother's time were domestics. I'm trying to remember exactly, you know, I see my grandfather he delivered milk. He worked for dairy. I'm trying to remember or they worked in a restaurant. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, they were always at the forefront. If they were not in jail, then the Black women were responsible for maintaining the family. So to stand up and speak up for yourself when you've always been on the bottom, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see how you're deteriorating or eroding anything by finally giving yourself a voice. I don't see it.
That's just
You can put me on the list.
perfect timing. Okay, Glenn. All right. I've got Teresa, Phyllis, then Glenn. Is there anybody else at this time? All right, Teresa.
Thank you. I did put in the chat how I distinguish the two, and intersectionality, just talking about different forms of oppression that will affect you. So one of the reasons Black women buys into feminism, even though the movement started in the United States by the way it's always presented to me, bored white housewives, not really, who wanted meaningful work outside their home, and not really realizing or acknowledging the women of color who were working outside the home to clean the white people's homes or do their laundry or whatever. So that was definitely a blind sign. But anything that lightens your burden still lightens your burden. And I just have several examples of how I just remember I was living in Honduras in 2008, and a white woman said to me, how can people, if people have a chance to vote for a woman, you know, to be the first woman of the United States, how can people not do it? And I looked at her and I said, you know, that's the same thing black people ask me. And, you know, the conversation was over. Um, but it's always interesting that particular time to be a black woman, because you just kept hearing, you know, black people say, you got to vote for the black president, and women saying, you got to vote for the woman. And I just thought, why don't I vote for the candidate who has the best policies? Anywho, um, but it's like, oh, you always want a black woman when it comes to let's bolster our numbers. But then for something, I think this group also talked about misogynoir, but you don't want to talk about the, you know, it's maybe gaining popularity. I don't know, it wanes and ebbs, but ebbs and flows, about how different policies, when you, and I still, I'm even afraid to say it. Let me see.
You
The
just hit the 2-minute mark.
okay. Yeah,
Interrupt.
I'll get
Get
back
back
on the
on?
list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Phyllis. Oh, and I see you, Stanton.
I just wanted to recommend a book, especially to Larry. It's called White Women's Christ and Black Women's Jesus, Feminist Christology and Womanist Response by Jacqueline Grant. I was familiar with that from when I was in seminary, and it talks about sort of the issues that you raised in your previous statement, and I'll type this all into the chat. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Glenn.
Well, I thought I had something to say. I thought I was going to have something to knock against something that Nancy said, but look like I don't have no ammunition. So she lucked out. But my opinion was, when she said that most black women, always worked outside, I just know my experience when I came up in the 50s. Most of the mothers were at home, in my neighborhood. But I went and looked up some facts just before I wanted to come to some facts along with that, but I couldn't. The facts was against it. It was most of the black women were working outside, I never liked the feminist movement. In fact, it was a white woman's movement. It wasn't something that the black women were into, and they more or less looked at any woman that stayed home and raising children, that they weren't doing it. They weren't. They had. They should be ashamed of themselves. That's all they have done. They ain't done nothing else. So I was, and the, as a kid, I was a cab driver at one point, and I used to one time I was opening up the door for a white woman. Oh, you ain't got to open no door for me. I mean, that's what the feminist movement went. It was like, they didn't want to be treated like a woman. That's all that to say.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Next we've got Teresa, then Stanton, Phyllis, and Nancy. Teresa.
All right, just finishing my thought. The other word, hierarchy, I don't know. I put in Keira Knightley because that's at first as I was saying it, Kyriarchy. But anyway, it kind of reminds me of that one South Park episode where all the little characters were rebranding themselves, and they had, oh, what's his name? Meghan Markle and Harry, whatever. They went into this rebranding thing. Now you think of this couple, this famous couple, always everything they do gets attention. Well, they wanted to be branded to be left alone. And I thought it was really funny that the rebranding company, no matter what the branding words were, they always ended it in the word victim. And they said, you're this, that, the other, victim. And every single person who was rebranded got that label of victim. So to see somebody, and I think of them as a power couple. I mean, in the whole, I rather watch The Crown on Netflix than to pay attention to what's happening with the monarchy. I can't wait for it to fold. I'm hoping that will happen during my lifetime. I kind of feel like my father when he was 70, wishing that we would have a black president, and he got to see that. I'm hoping that the British monarchy during my lifetime, just so I can say, oh, I checked that off my box. Not that I did anything but wished it to happen. But anyway, just to see powerful people like that, and then also saying, but I'm a victim of blah, blah, blah. But that is another example of this word, how to uplift or keep the British monarchy the way they are, thousands of millions of billions of people's lives wrecked for that institution. And yet they still see themselves as, oh, poor us. You know, that's another example of this, of how they, just that institution, have oppressed people globally, but they can still paint themselves as the victim or the oppressed of something else.
Yeah.
So
And you just hit 2 minutes. Perfect.
yay.
Stanton.
You can put me back on the list.
Okay, Glenn.
Yeah, I want to address the statement about the feminist movement being started by bored white women. I kind of disagree with that as a starting point of what the feminist movement was about. It was about women who did not have economic opportunities. If you were a single woman, a divorced woman, a widow, you couldn't get credit, you couldn't buy a home. There were so many economic repressive policies against women of all color. And I'm not saying that the feminist movement did right in terms of the color issue within the movement. They did not, and that's been historically demonstrated that there was issues between women of color and white women in the movement. However, that doesn't negate the origins and the reason for a feminist movement. And I don't think it's because women want to be like men. I think they want to be like people. They just want to be their own person and have the same rights as any other person. And so that's kind of my take on that. The other thing I want to just throw in there for a little bit of a bombshell, I also think one of the major sources of oppression is religion. And I think that's what creates a lot of historical oppression. All religions, not singling out any particular one. And specifically as it treats and relates to women. The male domination of religion historically is what I think has created many, many issues regarding at least the problems that are demonstrated between men and women historically. So that's the other thing I wanted to throw in there.
Excuse me. Thank you. Phyllis?
Well, Stanton just said basically everything that I wanted to say, only better. And I am really happy to hear those come from the mouth of a man in this conversation instead of one of us women. Yeah, no movement is perfect, and there were many, many flaws in the white feminist movement, but there are many white feminists today who are addressing those and really taking a backseat and listening to Black feminists or womanists about how we need to proceed. I'm really grateful Stanton challenged some of the false generalizations that were expressed to the person he was from the person he was replying to. And I think it's, this term is a way for us to stop just being like, well, I'm going to get mine, my group's going to get theirs, hell with the rest of you. And you know, the idea that Fannie Lou Hamer said that nobody's free till everybody's free, that fits into this term very well. The idea that if one group gets free, everybody's free, that has never been the case, and it's never going to be the case. That's why I'm a strong advocate for all of us working together to fight the oppression that is going on in the world. And I 100% agree with Stanton that a lot of that comes from religion, because men are controlling most of the religions in the world and don't really understand how to be a different person, they can't empathize with women, people of different genders, people of different sexualities. If it's not straight and patriarchal and cis, they don't have any empathy. Thank you.
Thank you. Just hit the 2-minute mark. Thank you. Again, sorry, I can't make the alarm louder. Okay, I've got Nancy, Glenn, Larry, and Bill on the list. Anybody else right now? Okay, Nancy.
I just wanted to say I agree with Stanton. I agree with Phyllis. But I also wanted to say, I think people should be allowed to be people. You're allowed to have your own choice of what you want to do. You don't have to fall into this, predetermined role that someone else set for you. And unfortunately, when you look at what's going on in the country, that is exactly what's happening. People are trying to force people into preset, predetermined roles. And if a couple comes together and they decide that they're going to have a family and he's going to work and she's going to stay home and that's fine. And if they decide she's going to work and he's going to stay home, that's fine. And if they both want to work, now obviously they both can't stay home, but if they both want to work, that's fine. I mean, allow people to be individuals is my point in that. And there are many paths to that. There is not one predetermined preset path that's right. Have some, give just be a little more open-minded about things and let people have some individuality. I mean, if I decide, if I as an individual, like there are a lot of women in my family for whatever reason, are unmarried, they don't have children, and they've chosen to be that way. That's what they want to do. What's wrong with that? The same thing with men. If they decide not to get married and don't want it, what's wrong with that? I want to be an individual. Don't want to be burdened. Well, I shouldn't say families are burdens, but they don't want that responsibility. Okay. If a couple comes together and they decide they don't want to have children, they don't want that responsibility. That's their choice. It's just let people be. Okay, I hope that was 2 minutes.
It was exactly 2 minutes.
Okay.
I was just about to interrupt, which I don't like doing, but will do. Okay, next we have Glenn, then Larry, Bill, and Phyllis. Glenn?
I disagree with the people who say religion is at fault here for oppression. Not true religion. When the scriptures say that Jesus was crucified, that's an allegorical. He wasn't physically crucified. His words were crucified. His words were changed. And we don't, most of what we see practiced today is not with the process brought. These are practices that you say that men have changed and men have oppressed people with it. But I also like to say that most people oppress themselves more than anybody else is oppressed. Choices they make. You make a choice to stick amphetamine in your mouth. That's a choice you make. After all the evidence that's in, you're gonna put a drug in your body. You see what happens to people. I seen two young people when I was coming up overdose in 1 week. You think I'm gonna take some of that stuff? No, most people oppress themselves. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Next we have Larry, Bill, Phyllis, and Teresa and Stanton.
Oftentimes when we speak on matters pertaining to religion, we don't know the origin of it. We're just going to have our, opinions and things. I could look at the flying of the airplanes into the World Trade Center in the name of Allah. Now, I wouldn't just necessarily take that at face value that is the religion of Islam. I wouldn't take it at face value. The matter of Jesus Christ been physically crucified, that's been proven through historical research and everything else. So that's really a moot argument. But white people and Black people have historically looked at religion and Christianity through different lenses. White people have always used Christianity as a way to oppress the others, wherein Black people have always looked at Christianity as a way to freedom. And so even with the book, what white woman's Christ, I believe, and Black woman's, Jesus, we go back to slavery, and it was religion, Christianity, that helped set the slaves free when they began to read the Bible. That's why laws were made to keep them from reading, fearful that they would read the Bible and other books that would serve to set them free. The civil rights movement, a human rights movement, especially during the 60s, grew out of the church, built around the love of God and Christ. And here we are in 2023, speaking on subjects of Black and white relationships and white supremacy and all this other stuff. And we think that religion plays no part in it.
And
That's almost like
2 minutes, pardon me.
Okay.
You just said the 2 minutes. Would you like to get back on the list?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, next we have Bill.
Hey, I probably run out of time. But first of all, I say I agree with Stanton, Phyllis, and Nancy, but I also agree with some things that Glenn and Larry said. We have to distinguish between the teachings of religion and the institutions of religion. It's a historical fact that the teachings of Jesus are prevalent and they influence a lot of people in positive ways, but they also, historical fact that the Romans, reacting to the power of monotheism that motivated Jewish revolt, they wouldn't keep having revolts. And so they co-opted a Jewish sect that preached more peaceful solutions as a way to promote allegiance to the Roman Empire. And they put this capital headquarters of the Catholic Church in Rome. So they would pledge allegiance to Rome. And it was used throughout the centuries to promote white oppression. It was used as justification of colonialism and other things. But as I said, that doesn't negate the teachings of religion. It just negates how it's used. So we have to be careful of those distinctions. And Martin Luther,
You're right at 2 minutes, Bill. Would you like to
I'll
get
finish my sentence. Martin Luther translated the Bible into German so the ordinary person could read it, because he knew the power of the teachings of religion. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Phyllis?
Yeah, I don't know how to determine what is the true religion, because the three Abrahamic religions were all developed in times where, first of all, thousands of years ago, in societies completely unlike our own, where women were second or less than second class citizens, and men were the decision makers in all areas of life, even over the lives of their family members and their servants. So how that can be reduced down to find the purity of it, because men, and I'm just saying men because women weren't the leaders in any of the development of those three religions, they messed it up because there's always control and power involved. And I think that we have to be aware of other people not taking those things with the same gravity or I don't know what the other word is, that people who believe in it do, and not think that any of those three religions applies to the world, that the teachings as they are now should be imposed on people who aren't believers. And honestly, not on people who are believers either, because the believers don't all believe the same thing. There's lots of Catholic women who are pro-choice, for instance.
Just at 2 minutes.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Teresa?
All right, I would just like to say that I was raised Baptist, and I think it was when I was a teenager, Southern Baptists declared that married women will graciously submit to their husbands, and I said, "Ooh, I'm never getting married." And I'm sure I'll be corrected, but I thought it was about 300 years after Christianity was started, however verb you want to use, that the marriage ceremony was even created, invented, introduced into the religion as a solution to inheritance. That's what I heard, but of course there are people who are very much more well learned than I am. And I thought, wow, so this whole marriage thing is just, I mean, it's a different flavor of bride price and compensation and who gets to inherit what when you have children and property. So, to say that religion doesn't shape the choices that you make in life, I highly disagree with that. And I'm sure that comment wasn't 2 minutes because I want people to have enough time to tell me how I'm wrong. Thank
You
you.
still have 45 seconds, but.
I'm not taking it.
Okay. All right, next is Stanton, then we have Larry, Bill, Phyllis, and we probably have time for a couple more if needed. Stanton?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the concept of religion on paper. Everything's lovely on paper. It's a nice philosophy. I don't think it is intended to harm. I don't think it was created to harm, but it harms. And just like communism, great philosophy, everybody is able to do according to their means and according to their needs, but doesn't work in practice either. We've seen that many occasions throughout the world. So as a philosophy, yes, religion's nice. I don't think that the people who flew the planes into the World Trade Center were practicing Islam. I don't think that the Taliban is necessarily practicing Islam, but we know what they're doing to women in Afghanistan. I think the Black church in Uganda that persecutes gay people is not necessarily practicing Christianity as a practice. When you have Orthodox Jewish women praying separately from men, that's a separation that starts from the get-go. That happens in Islam as well. Men and women do not pray together. So when you create these separations initially in the practice of something, there's a ripple effect, and it's the beginning of that ripple effect. So again, religion in practice is not religion on paper. And The only other thing I just kind of was thinking about is that I think even the oppressor, and I think Glenn was alluding to this, is personally oppressed as well by their own torments and their own needs to keep oppressing. I think there's a certain oppression in just having to maintain the role of oppressor. I don't have any sympathy for them necessarily, but I think there's still a psychological component. And I'm kind of rambling now, but I think the problem, it all goes back to the cave is what I was going to say. So that's, I think, where we got to start figuring out what happened in the cave.
Larry? I think you're muted. We still can't hear you, Larry.
I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
it's interesting. Stanton should mention the Black leaders in Africa, because I was proud to see those African country presidents stand up against the LGBT concept of America. Those are independent countries, and no Kamala Harris or nobody else could go to Africa and tell those Black African leaders what to do. So I was proud of that moment. But even Stanton, from as a Jew and from your Torah, you know, the last verse in the book of Judges says that there was no king in Israel in those days, that everyone did what was right in their own eyesight. And this is one of the things that led to the downfall of Israel, and one of the things that's leading to the downfall of America. We have to have a sense of moral values. If we don't, you know, and life and the things we do must be done to foster the continuation of the human race. And anything contrary to that would mean the destruction of the human race. That's not religion, that's just common sense. You know, even something Glenn said earlier, you know, to put needles in your arms and other things, that's not religion, that's common sense. And if everybody was doing it, then everybody would overdose. If everybody was killing babies in the womb, that would lead to the destruction of the human race. And so we can't do everything we want to do. We must do some things that's for the good of society. And whether one is religious or not, there are some things called moral values. Moral values. When we lose a sense of morality, then we lose a sense of our existence, and everybody just do what they want to do. The guy on the street that's carrying a gun, you're asking why he's carrying a gun. I'm carrying a gun for protection.
2 minutes, Larry, excuse me.
Okay.
I think, so we have Bill, Phyllis, and Glenn. We probably have room for like 1 or 2 extra after that. So Stanton after Glenn. Anybody else? And then after, I guess after Stanton, we'll start the wrap up. So Bill is next. Bill?
As the only old white man in the group, I think that, Stanton, you're not old, you're a young man, at least a middle-aged man, but not old. Anyway, as I said before, old white men have been at the top of the pyramid for too long. They should step aside. Women are much smarter than men, and they should have a turn. White women, women of color, together should have a turn at the top of the pyramid. Also, I have 2 daughters, and my oldest daughter has chosen to be single. She prefers to be single. She's very happy with her life now. And she's 47. And my youngest daughter is married and have 2 kids, and she's happy to be a mother. They take very different approaches to establishing their identity. But I respect both of them. So anyway, as I said before, the teachings of religion provide a moral compass. And I think Glenn, he shared with us a PBS documentary on the origins of Islam. And from that, I determined that Christianity was a monotheism of white people, and Islam was a monotheism of people of color. And during the Middle Ages, there was a great struggle to see who would dominate the Mediterranean world in Europe.
We're right at 2 minutes, Bill.
What?
You just hit the 2-minute mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll finish my sentence. And Islam almost won. They were at the gates of Vienna, and the only reason why they didn't take Vienna was their heavy cannons got stuck in the mud, so they couldn't take them or batter down the walls of Vienna. So they lost. But I yield my time.
Okay, thank you. Phyllis, and then we have Glenn, Stanton, and then we'll do the wrap up. Phyllis?
Well, I don't think, well, I know that you don't need religious belief to be a moral person, and having religious belief doesn't necessarily make you a moral person. What Larry said about supporting the African leaders in their oppression of the LGBTQIA plus community in their countries literally is an example of that, and made me sick to my stomach. That is supporting hate and violence against a group of people who have done nothing to harm anyone. And you know, the Bible was used to justify slavery. The Bible is used now to justify all kinds of oppression. So how is it that people can say, well, the people who interpreted the Bible to justify enslavement of Black people were wrong, but we're right now because we understand more and we know? That's, I call BS. I had so much written down. Oh, I wanted to say also, just the idea of addiction, it's not a choice, it's a disease that has to be treated. So to say someone has made a choice, you know, I can make a choice to have a drink, and I can also say I don't really need a drink because I'm not addicted to alcohol. But somebody who is addicted to alcohol cannot choose generally to have a drink and be okay. And the same is for drugs, cigarettes, sex, the internet. People don't know they're addicted to something until they're really addicted to something. And some people are addicted to power. And also to talk about the marriage thing that Teresa brought up. No one was considered a bastard or illegitimate until the marriage became a tool of the patriarchy to keep men theoretically would then know where their babies came from. They would know their wife wasn't having somebody else's kids. So thanks, Marla.
Thank you. All right, Glenn, and then Stanton, and then we'll do the wrap up. Glenn?
Yeah, when I was talking about person has to take a choice, you're not addicted to it before you put it in your mouth. But your intelligence tells you, look how many people are dying from it. Look how many people have lost their lives, lost their job, lost their family. You have witnessed all of this. You oppress your own self, thinking, well, I can take a chance because I may not be addicted. That sounds like a damn fool. Now, about women having influence, women have had a lot of influence. The wife of President Roosevelt had a lot of influence over her husband in making government policy. And the the wife of Bill Clinton, the wife of Jimmy Carter. All of these women, and in other countries, you have had women who like Margaret Thatcher, who are head of the government, voted in as head of the government. So that's you don't have to be. And a lot of people who are really in power, they're not in the seat. They're pulling the strings behind the seat. You don't have to be in that seat to have power. That's it.
Thank you. Phyllis has a clarifying question for you, Glenn.
I just want to clarify, were you calling me a damn fool?
No, Phyllis, you know I wouldn't call you a damn.
Oh, I don't know, but thank you.
Okay, Stanton, you're the last person on the list, and then we'll go to the wrap up.
Yeah, I just want to address Larry's concern about the end of mankind with homosexuality and abortion. Well, we're at 8 billion and counting currently. I think people having more people is going to be the ruin of humanity. We're going to doom ourselves out of a planet because we will make it inhospitable to live in a planet that is polluted and has more people than it can sustain. And then as far as morality, it kind of reminds me of the George Carlin line, which is my stuff is stuff, your stuff is fill in the blank, SHIT. And so it's like my morality is good morality, but your morality is not good morality. And so who is the arbiter of who is moral and what is moral? You or me? And that's the generic you, not you specific, Larry. It's just the universal who. I mean, like Phyllis said, you don't have to believe in religion to be a moral person. And the fact that that one thinks that those go hand in hand and only you can be moral by being religious, I find that to be sort of a unfortunate set of conclusions. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, we'll move on to the wrap up. And the people I have on the list who did not speak during the regular time and get 2 minutes are Cindy, Greer, Marva, and Amal. If I'm missing anybody, please let me know. But otherwise, without further ado, Cindy, you've got 2 minutes.
Interesting discussion. My dad was a minister, so I grew up in the church, Sunday school, choir, went to church twice a week or twice a Sunday and usually Wednesday. I don't need religion in my life because I've got the levee and the river and my garden and things growing is what's important to me. I treat people with respect. That's important to me. Going to church on Sunday when I could be working outside is more important. How it all fits into, somebody may judge me and skipping church. You know what? It's my call because it's my life. I found the discussion somewhat limited because we don't all think the same in terms of what we value and what's important to us. Hopefully we'll have enough respect for each other that we can live our lives successfully. Enough said. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Greer, you have 2 minutes.
I don't know.
Greer, you've got 2 minutes if you would like them. Okay, I can come back. Let's see, Marva, 2 minutes if you'd like it.
Very interesting discussion. Gave me a lot to think about. I wasn't familiar with this word, carry key. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. And if it had to be a collective collective all kinds of discrimination, homo homophobia, sexist, racism. All you can gather up those types of discrimination, all of them. If that's what karaoke means. Lots of information taken by the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Marva. Amal, you've got 2 minutes if you'd like it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great article. I have to do more research. This is a new word for me. Haven't before this article, I can't say that I'd ever seen it or heard it or understand the concept of the definition behind it or how it's used based on how it plays itself out in society. So I have to do more research. But great article. Great discussion. I had a wonderful time hearing everybody's views and learned a lot. Look forward to the next conversation.
Thank you, Amal. Rear, you've got 2 minutes if you're there.
Grill is on a important phone call. She says you can skip up.
Okay, we can come back and give her 2 minutes instead of the 1. All right, so now the other folks who already spoke, you get 1 minute for the wrap up, and I'll go by the order on my screen. Glenn.
Oh, you said my name?
Yes, you've got 1 minute to do the wrap up if you'd like it.
Okay, let me see. Well, I enjoyed the conversation. It's very engaging. But no, I wasn't expecting my name to be called first. I'm normally the last guy on the list, so I ain't had a chance to warm up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Nancy, you have 1 minute.
It was a very interesting discussion, learned a new word, learned a new concept. But I'm looking for I can't find it, but there was a meme that is you have the right to believe what you want to believe, but you do not have the right to insist that I believe what you believe. And so I agree with a lot of the opinions primarily put out by Phyllis and Stanton. We are individuals, and we have the right to live as an individual. We don't have to live a preset, predetermined existence set forth by something that was established, I don't know, what, 6,000 years ago? No, things have changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanton?
Yeah, this goes back to last week's conversation with the concept of just respecting people and respecting one another. I really do respect everyone that's in this group, and I don't always agree with them, but I don't disvalue their opinions because I value them as a human being and I respect them as a human being. And I think that's what we all need to do. And I think we'd all be living in a better world.
Thank you. Teresa.
Yes, this was also a new word for me, so thank you for that introduction. The concept hasn't been new. I just should have known that there was a word for it. So I'm glad I finally know the word for it, and I look forward to next week's discussion.
Thank you. Marion.
Thank you, Marla, for this very interesting topic. It certainly was a word I'd never heard before. And thank everybody for their comments. I appreciate everyone who's here in our discussion. So thanks again, Marla, for a very, very interesting topic for our morning's discussion.
Thank you. Larry.
Yeah, let me say I have a sense of gratitude that this conversation what was talked about today, because I was almost about to get a serious attitude for a group like this to think that we can shut out the discussion of religion when it is what played a part in the founding of this nation. It is what played a part in enslaving people, and it is what played a part in setting people free. And but my attitude has subsided, and it's not to say that this forum should be one of religion in nature, but we certainly should not strive to shut it out. And I've not heard nothing on this call this morning that insists that anyone have to believe a certain way. I've not heard that. But this is sometimes what happens when we build up such resentment, towards God and towards faith and towards religion, that this resentment spills over to things pertaining to masculinity and paternalism.
You just hit 1 minute.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Phyllis.
That's all right.
Wow. I feel like Glenn, I'm not warmed up, or I don't know how to draw it all together, but this word was brand new to me as well. I had heard of Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza. That's my cat sneezing behind me. From when I was in seminary, and I haven't heard of this book, so I might look it up, but I appreciate the new term. I appreciate having a term to apply to like concept that kind of I had in my being, but didn't know how to describe other than with intersectionality. This is really helpful. And I think there's a difference between discussing religion and how it leads to oppression and versus like imposing religion on people based on one's own beliefs. This was a good article. It was a good discussion. Thank you, Marla.
Thank you. Right at 1 minute. And then we've got Bill for 1 minute, and Greer, if she's off the phone, can have 2. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, as everyone knows, I'm not a fan of organized religion, but I am a fan of teachings of religion. And one of the 10 commandments said, love thy neighbor as thyself. And if you follow that, you wouldn't be a racist. You would accept everyone. So I just wanted to make that point. A good discussion. And as I said, as someone said, everybody should be what they want to be. I mentioned how my 2 daughters have chosen a very different role in life, but I respect both of those choices, and they appear to be comfortable with them. So thanks, Marla.
Thank you. And is Greer off the phone?
No.
Okay. I mean, if she comes back in, she's welcome to give the 2 minutes. I'll just give a couple of final thoughts. I do appreciate that it's probably a kyriarchy. I really wasn't sure, and I went on that Google how to pronounce words, and it was like hierarchy, but that feels so awkward. So I think kyriarchy is probably the correct way to say that word. But anyway, I like the article. It was brand new to me. Like I said before, I feel that any word or any term or concept that can kind of better describe a thing as big as what this is useful and can be helpful. I think we can miss things when we reduce, we miss things in people when we reduce things down to like one term like patriarchy. That obviously leaves a lot of people out, and that can wind up doing more harm when we're not trying to do harm. I have all of these things I wrote down that I honestly cannot even read my own writing these days. But suffice to say that white feminism, it is not it. You know, it has never included other folks. It's never included marginalized women. It has never brought in the LGBTQ community. Feminism is for everybody, and we've got to do better, especially we white women, of not being so harmful and violent in saying that we include people, but we do not practice that at all. Feminism is for everybody. And I know there's some controversy behind her at times, but I did find the book We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Adichie to be a very awesome book, very helpful in presenting the concept that feminism is indeed for everybody, no matter where you are. And then finally, I don't know, I had so many other thoughts and I'm very disorganized these days in my thinking, but I would also agree, you can be, one thing that stood out to me, you can be a moral person or have morals without having religion. And that religion in many instances has been very, very harmful and continues to perpetuate harm on many, many people that it supposedly says it's trying to, you know, uphold or represent. And that's the irony in that. That's really, really all that I have. Anyway, I appreciate everybody's input, and especially thank you for, you know, I was excited when things started to get going, because at first I thought there wasn't going to be much discussion. So thanks to everybody for your input, and look forward to more discussions in the future. Thank you.